Welcome to the Wildlife Wire. I'm Mark Searles,
And I'm Samantha Miller.
and this is your source for wildlife news and the people that make it. On this week's episode, Attenborough turns 99. Wildlife Services delivers mind-boggling numbers. Yosemite's #1 predator, and a man who is the antidote to snake bites. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Mark. Top of the morning to ya. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Got a busy week ahead of us, but exciting.
I know we're going to be in Durango for Colorado Parks and Wildlife this week, and I'm excited to be there.
Yeah, so am I. Gonna do a coyote presentation. Gonna see some hardworking volunteers that we haven't seen in person for a while. So all around, really great time. And before we dive into this week's stories, and this is going to transition nicely into my first story of the day. But
Right.
I just wanted to clear up. Last week when we were going on our philosophical journey, I was talking about how things from our past, good or bad, like slavery, like beaver trade and fur-bearing animal trade in general, and feathers and all that stuff, how it shaped how we got here today. So I just wanted to clear up. I don't condone any of those activities, but what I do is realize how they changed the course of humanity in America. And so I actually reached out to Dan Flores to get his hot take on it. And he taught me a new word I didn't know. So when you're looking at theoretical directions that history could have gone in, it's called a counterfactual.
Ooh.
So he hadn't done a counterfactual on the fur trade, but he did say the main things biologically that would be different would be, obviously America would be much wetter because we would have all of those beavers here. And then also the Pacific coast would be a lot healthier due to, the sea otters being around and having more stable kelp forest. And so I also did a deep dive, and what I found too is it's just fascinating how anything like this can change the course of humanity. And cities like St. Louis might not exist. It may have taken shape in a different way, but that was like a real headquarters for the fur trade. And then also like our Western expansion would have been slowed down dramatically had we not had the fur trade, which would be a positive, right? But granted, who knows if me and you would be sitting here doing the Wildlife Wire, but I'm willing to take that chance.
No, I think that's the butterfly effect, and I'm really glad that you were not canceled. But I do think it's important that we lean into discussions like that. And sometimes, as we navigate tricky waters, it's hard to really vocalize how we're feeling or kind of walk through those feelings out loud, which is really what you and I do each week on this podcast. So thanks for clearing that up. I never once believed that you were condoning either of those activities, not even for a second. But I'm glad we're here. And now we've got good news and bad news this week. Am I right?
Yep. And we're going to start with this one is good news in itself, but bad news of what the topic is. And it's a good transition because Sir David Attenborough calls the commercial fishing trade modern day colonialism at sea. And so on May 8th, he is turning 99 years old. And on that birthday, he is releasing his latest film that talks a lot about the commercial fishing industry. And this film is called Ocean. And what's really cool and sad, but it's cool. It's amazing that they got this footage, but they have footage of like trawlers scraping the bottom of the ocean trying to get fish and shrimp and all of that. And he says the idea of bulldozing a rainforest causes outrage, yet we do the same underwater every day. Surely
Wow.
you would argue it must be illegal.
Yeah. Well, look at David Attenborough taking a stand. I'm glad.
Yeah,
And
it's
we
about
learned
time.
yeah, God. And yeah, if folks want to hear more about commercial fishing, we did an excellent interview with Emma Halverson of Wild Fish Conservancy, really talking about the impacts that commercial fishing can have on the fish themselves, but also to endangered orcas. And I'm really glad that this new film will cover that.
Yeah, me too. And they're going to play it at the UN's upcoming ocean conference in Nice.
Mhm.
So, yeah, if there's one voice in this world around all things wildlife that people listen to, it's Sir David Attenborough. So, hopefully, this can really enlighten a lot of folks and bring some change.
Oh, wow.
And
Well,
I love that he's 99 and he's still working. Like he works probably harder than he ever has.
yeah, him and Jane Goodall, right? I think that they just keep going. Okay, so my bad news is guess who is at it again? And I have a hint. It is not Wyoming. Well, it's kind of Wyoming, but it's not just Wyoming this time.
But it starts with a WA. Is
It
it
starts with a what?
Wildlife Services?
Yes, Wildlife Services. Woo! Uh, so
You
Vox
needed
actually
one of those sad whistles. It's like,
yeah. Uh, Vox did a really excellent story with some charts, which I love a good visual of atrocity to help
they're
folks
really helpful on audio podcasts.
uh, that they are. But I will link to the Vox charts. And so what
Does the
Vox did,
Vox say?
okay, the Vox does not say eki eki ow. It says the US government's war on wildlife explained in three charts. So, since 2004, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Wildlife Services, which is a very secretive program, we talked to Carter Niemeyer a bit about it. He's a former employee of Wildlife Services. This is housed within the Animal Plant and Health Inspection Service. So, right, we've got layers and layers of where this part of the government hides. Unfortunately, Musk did not cut this program, and since 2004, the US Department of Agriculture has killed 58 million wild animals.
This is an
58
insane number.
million wild animals. And it is absolutely absurd. Our friends coyotes are frequently targeted. In 2024, they killed 57,999 coyotes. They also kill a lot of starlings, and they do those with a poison that actually kills them in a pretty inhumane way. Pigeons, feral pigs, and then other species. They kill birds. They accidentally killed a golden eagle last year, which is a protected raptor. They're killing cormorants because they're eating fish, that the commercial industry may be interested in. They kill just about everything: black bears, mountain lions. They did kill a wolf, one of Colorado's wolves in Wyoming. And again, this whole program is funded by taxpayer dollars and kills wildlife on behalf of people raising livestock. So it's another kind of handout to the ranching industry. And it's just also really sad the way that they're killing animals. They do use traps, they use poisons, they use all sorts of things that are a horrific way to kill animals. I will say there's one thing they do okay. So I'd like to even though this is terrible, I'd like to
Well, I
end.
have a. Do you know anything about the starling? So I know starlings. They were brought over here because they're pretty birds, and then they have since spread everywhere. And I know they compete with bluebirds. But my question is, does the mass killing, does it actually do anything to slow their population increases? And if not, like, I don't understand. It seems like we're losing this starling battle, so they should probably just stop killing them.
Yeah, it's interesting. They do that with coyotes too, where we know coyotes will actually have larger litters if we overkill coyotes in an area. But with starlings, nope, they seem to come back every year. We do poison them around feedlots. They don't like starlings getting into cattle feed. So that's really where they're doing most of the starling killing. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think they're helping anything. We know they do compete with native species. But at the same time, it's like what we talked about before with compassionate conservation, invasive species. How do we navigate this? Dr. Mark Beckhoff just had an excellent article that I'm not covering today, all about hippos in Colombia that had been
Mm.
introduced there by Pablo Escobar and then continued to breed as Pablo Escobar hippos do. And how do you navigate this with animals that we as humans brought over? Because they are still living beings, whether they belong here or not. And how do we navigate those waters? I think those are big questions that maybe we can answer. Maybe we'll bring Mark back and have a bigger discussion about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't agree with Pablo Escobar bringing hippos, but at the same time, that's like the most baller drug dealer move. It's like,
Nope,
give
we're
me,
not.
I
That
want
Mark,
hippos.
you just got yourself uncanceled at the beginning. You don't get to say that Pablo Escobar gets to be a baller and bring hippos to Colombia.
I
He also
mean,
brought other
it's
animals.
just so absurd, you know? It's like, what do you want, Pablo? I want hippos. It's like a 5-year-old, you know? It's like, but Pablo, they don't live on this continent, but I want hippos.
No, it's very interesting. He actually had a small zoo on his property there. I'm gonna just link this story now too. He had a small zoo on his property there, and because of domain laws, even after he was arrested, they couldn't enter the property and start moving the animals. So the hippos broke free
Of course.
and are making their home in Colombia. And some of the animals in his private zoo have been put into public zoos in the area, but the hippos, no, they found freedom.
Yeah, hippos break free. I did a hippo transport. The game reserve that I lived in Zambia, they had there were no more hippos in the river, so we went to Kafue National Park and captured some hippos to release them. We put them in what we called a boma, which was just like a fenced in area in an oxbow lake next to the Lunga River. And we just waited for them to decide to bust out of it.
Oh,
And then they were in the river. And then there was me traveling the river with bags of money, paying farmers because the hippos had walked and smashed all their maize.
right. That's what they're doing in Colombia. It's very interesting. So I digress. My bad news was wildlife services. My interesting story was apparently hippos. Bonus story for everyone. And I think we've got good news now to lift everyone up again.
Yeah, mine's good news for all of the creatures out there that have pointy teeth
Okay.
because this comes out of Yosemite National Park and this says this cute animal is one of Yosemite's most dangerous, rangers say. And it is in fact the mule deer and they have way, they get no uh, I'm fairly certain it's like zero or in single digits as far as conflicts with mountain lions or bears or anything in the park. But mule deer, people think they're all floofy fluffies, and they go and try to feed them and pet them, and then you know. Have you ever seen a video of a deer doing like a speed bag on someone's face? Like they go up on their hind legs and start kicking their front legs.
No,
And
not seen that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
okay.
I saw one where this guy, apparently a hunter. I mean, he had his rifle and his orange on and everything, and this deer was right next to him. And the deer, I guess, realized what he was up to, and he gave him the speed bag to the face.
Ooh.
Yeah, they can get you, and then obviously, with car wrecks and things, they're also cause a lot of not conflicts, but possible injuries or mortalities. So,
Is that what we're looking for, Mark? Was that the word? They cause vehicular collisions.
ooh,
Ooh.
yes,
Yes, those deadly deer. I well, first of all, if you're hunting deer, at least that deer was able to fight back briefly,
Right.
however long that lasted. Uh, and I do think it's a common misconception that I hope most folks know is that deer, moose, elk, we've seen elk do this too. They can be incredibly dangerous to people. Bison, gosh, bison too. And yet, when deer or elk or bison attack or kill a human, the way the news covers it is unfortunate accident
Hmm.
befalls this person. But if a coyote just like meanders behind someone on a trail, it's like coyote stalking, charge
Vicious. Yeah, vicious.
with attack. I'm like, the deer just killed somebody over here. Um, so yeah, I hope we could continue to work on those misconceptions that folks
Did you
have.
say moose conceptions?
I did say moose conceptions. I've been trying to sneak moose into all of my things, and I'm really glad that you saw me there and heard me. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I had a herd of bison surround my car yesterday as they were crossing over a bridge, and they were very cute. They had lots of babies, but honestly, like when they're 3 feet from me and I have my window down, I am leaning towards the middle of the car. Like I never feel that comfortable. I don't know how these folks try to get selfies with bison. Yeah, I I love them. They're beautiful, they're amazing, but I don't want to be that close to them.
No, I had a moose charge my car before, Mark, and then I was like, "How am I going to?" And that was an actual charge, like with his head down. I'm like, "How am I going to explain this to insurance?" Like,
Yeah.
I was just waiting at a stop sign. There happened to be a young bull moose there. He happened to be feeling a little frisky, and then he just didn't like that I existed. Like, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was recording on my phone because I had my 600 millimeter on my camera. Like there was no way I was going to be able to get any shots of these bison coming by. But the thought occurred to me as I was recording on my phone that I was like, I need to make sure I'm focusing on that one because he looks pretty angry at my car. And if he decides to give it a good headbutt, at least I need
Yeah.
this video evidence.
Well, I am glad you got the video evidence. I'm glad you're okay and you didn't get headbutted. And I have one more piece of news for us to be glad about. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
So there's this guy. He obviously lives in America,
An American. Hmm.
an American, and he has, over the last 2 decades, subjected himself to over 200 poisonous snake bites from different species of poisonous snakes.
Does he live
And
in Florida?
I really don't know. I was thinking of that. I was like, this guy has to live in Florida. Uh, but his name is Tim Freed, and his blood has now been shown to protect against fatal doses from almost all species of snakes. And so what they're saying, and they are BBC, what BBC is saying that an unparalleled snake antivenom has been made from his blood because he has subjected himself to over 200 bites. And so now we might have a universal snake antivenom that can be used should someone get bitten by a poisonous snake. So that's some good news there from whatever this guy was up to. He is working with, health officials. He is making things happen, and he has basically given his body to the snakes and science, so we can all coexist better with poisonous species of snakes.
Do you
So,
think that that was his intent at the beginning, though? Or he was like, I want to see what this feels like?
I think that we learned from our last rattlesnake story that most of the people that get bitten by rattlesnakes are drunk men making poor choices. So who knows how he started, but he started nonetheless, and he's done good by all of these bites. So link that article, and it's definitely some good news for folks, especially in rural areas with a lot of venomous snakes. As you know, you lived in Zambia. Having access to antivenom has often been species dependent in the past, where you need antivenom for the specific snake. Gosh, I'll get there by talking that you've been bitten by. And now this is looking like you can use an antivenom for multiple species of snakes and have that on hand.
That was amazing. Well,
Thanks.
that wraps up our news for today, and just in time too, because our guest for this week is logging in. So stay with us, and we will be right back with our guest. Well, we have a wonderful guest from the northeast of this great country, Miss Chris Schadler, and she is the co-founder of the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition and has been a professor at the University of New Hampshire and lectured at Granite State College. And she has a wonderful background on our canids of the Northeast, and that's the primary goal of this conversation today. But I want to dive a little bit into your personal background of like how you got involved with coyotes and wolves, and how that experience shaped your path to what it is today.
Mm. Well, thanks, Mark. Um, so back in the 70s, I had an opportunity to raise a wolf pup for a short period of time at the place called the Wolf Park in Battleground, Indiana. And I never in my life thought I would do that, but an opportunity presented itself. And it's one of those paths taken that has shaped the rest of my life. So it was really great. And I was hooked ever since then and worked for a while in the Midwest on wolf education, etc. But then when we moved back east, someone gave me a border collie. And that doesn't sound like it would be a pivotal part of this journey. But in fact, if you have a border collie, you've got to have sheep. And if you get sheep, you've got to be able to take care of them. And knowing only a very little bit about coyotes when I moved east, I learned a great bit about coyotes in all of the years that I farmed sheep. We had bought a farm that had a lot of coyote predation on sheep, and the guy quit sheep in disgust. And I thought, this is the farm for me and my dogs and my sheep. And so having full confidence in my ability that I could tame the wild coyote, I embarked on this ridiculous mission to have this farm in that place in southern New Hampshire at the time. And as my sheep proliferated, so did my knowledge about how to live with coyotes. And it was, I think it's the best credential that I could have actually to talk about coyotes. I I managed like crazy for the first 4 or 5 years, kept coyotes off my sheep. I had 5 sturdy but rather useless border collies at the time. And every morning and evening, we would take a walk around the farm and they would mark. And the guy that I was married to at the time, he would mark too, and sort of pride himself on being the prime thing that kept those coyotes off the sheep. Oh man, it was laughable. But at any rate, the coyotes, I kept them off my sheep. And since that time, I've been able to talk to many farmers' organizations about their practices in protecting their sheep and hopefully coexisting with coyotes. And I think over the years, I hope that it's made a difference. I think a lot of farmers in New Hampshire are, I think they're pretty savvy right now as to what they need to do. So, in all humility, I say that it was because of the sheep that I learned about the coyote. And right around those early days of sheep farming, I met Camilla Fox. And the two of us sort of hooked up very long distance. And I've been with Project Coyote for a long time. It seems almost since their inception. So when John Harrigan and I co-founded the Wildlife Coalition. Um, Camilla and I were of exactly the same mind with regard to the messaging, the importance of getting word out to everybody, young children and old people with lots of time on their hands. Just ask people like me, an old person with tons of time on my hands.
Sounds like you
And
need some sheep.
huh?
Sounds like you need to get some sheep.
Yeah, no. I've done that. Thanks. I'm a happy person now. Um, so, but the rules around sheep farming, I think, even though here in the East our farms are small and it's relatively easy to um to manage sheep fairly well, actually, and coexist with coyotes. It's a little bit different out where you are in Midwestern states and out west because these ranches that you have out there are enormous, far-ranging things. And so it really, I think it is reason for ranchers out there to really have to step up and provide protection for their stock at night. And I think that's been a real big problem. And it's a huge difference between sheep farming here and there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the coalition. I'd like to get back to that in a second, but I am curious about, as you're working with these sheep producers, what are some of the top issues that you see that can be corrected to help with coexistence with coyotes and other native carnivores?
Sure. So am I speaking as an Easterner?
Yes, as an Easterner.
As
Yes.
an Easterner, bringing sheep in every single night, no matter what, no matter how beautiful the night, bringing them in. Um, at the time that I had my sheep farm, I used no electric, no lethal methods whatsoever. If I was to do it again, I think I would have an electric wire on the top and the bottom of the fence, just because it would make my life. And I would also invest in a donkey. Out here, coyotes fear donkeys with good reason. Donkeys are the machoid coyote deterrent. Um, a lot of people use guard dogs now, and I know out west they use them as well. So, and then being aware, of course, of the timing of a coyote's life. So if you know that they're breeding January to March, you can predict that from March to June, they're going to be denning. And as soon as those pups are out of the den, those adults are hunting like crazy to feed those pups. It is at that time that the onus is upon all of the owners of any kind of livestock that is vulnerable to coyote predation. The onus is upon us to take extra special care with our stock. And, when you are willing to learn about coyote behavior, it becomes far easier to be able to predict what that behavior is going to mean for you as a livestock owner.
Yeah, I would say even in the Western states too, the donkeys are really incredible employees. One of my best friends is a sheep farmer, and she has two donkeys out there with her sheep all the time, and then four guardian dogs that kind of roam around with everybody. But those donkeys, they will run off coyotes. They have ran off a mountain lion. They are just on top of it. And I haven't ever seen an animal more effective at taking on, large carnivores than a donkey, which is surprising, I think, to a lot of people.
Well, they're fearless.
Yeah.
They're just fearless animals. And, they're an animal that sometimes you can even pick up at an SPCA. So, a person would not have to invest the kind of money that someone who wants a livestock guard animal would have to invest, if they can't afford a guard animal.
Right, right, or the time too. They kind of naturally do that job. There's also the BLM has burrows that can be really useful in that kind of way as
Yes.
well. And that's Bureau of Land Management for. I forget sometimes I speak in acronyms that not everyone who's listening
Yeah.
knows. Um, so yes, I think that that's so cool to hear, and I love hearing about coexistence on the ground. And so you started this coalition too in New Hampshire, and you mentioned that briefly. I'd love to hear more about that and what do you all focus on?
Predators. We advocate specifically and almost entirely for predators. John Harrigan and I lived on opposite ends of the state, but I heard of him when he wrote an article saying that he as a sheep farmer liked coyotes. And I thought, what? There's another person in the state of New Hampshire who likes coyotes. How can you not admire this animal? Anyway, so we became fast friends. And then as time went on, we saw that, in fact, fur bearers in New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine and New York State are all in decline, serious decline. And yet hunting continues to happen, to be allowed on these species. And the decline is due to a number of different things. Trapping is the single greatest threat to fur bearers out here. But in addition, of course, hunting and now rodenticides are playing a horrible and effective toll on fur bearers as all of these different rodenticides proliferate in the environment and then of course spread through the food chain. So we saw the decline, and we were able to attract some amazing people, scientists all initially, some PhDs, a lot of folks with master's degrees, with years in the field. And that, I think, sets us a little apart from most groups that do wildlife advocacy. We're fairly pragmatic when it comes to these animals. And I think that that's given us some credibility with our fish and game. Um, not not a lot of success yet, but some. We've had some success. So um, so that's basically what we do. Advocate for predators.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a common thread among uh, advocacy orgs around the country is the caveat of not a lot of success yet, but there is some success, and we are continuing to move forward because these things just take so much time, and but you're advocating while you're also hoping for better cultures, newer, more progressive cultures to get into the state agencies. And so it's just using time on your side to do this. And so I I am fascinated. I want to transition into Eastern coyotes specifically, and then I'd like to talk about Eastern wolves as well. But yes,
I
please.
could I just follow up on something you just said, Mark?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And of course, I will talk about Eastern coyotes until your listeners fall dead asleep tomorrow
Well,
night.
most of our listeners listen to this right before bedtime. So,
Ah!
yeah.
Very soothing things, that we talk about on here. So
um, you know, the interesting thing about what's happening now, of course, is the decline in hunters and um, the the need that wildlife agencies have to garner the support of the general public. So while hunters make up a tiny portion of the population, the general public, while becoming, I think, more educated in general, is largely unaware of what the rules and regulations are around these animals. And when they discover that, in fact, a lot of these animals aren't being managed very, very well, become angry with Fish and Game. I'm a supporter of Fish and Game. I think by and large, they're really an important they're my favorite agency, certainly. And what we're trying to do is get Fish and Game to understand the importance of reaching out to the general public and having more progressive rules and regulations so that the public feels more invited and perhaps someday has a seat at the table. We don't have a seat at the table, and that's also a huge problem. So I wanted to make sure that I said that because I think it's so critical to how the future is going to unfold. It has to take an educated, engaged general public to make Fish and Game develop the kind of rules and regulations that will, in fact, adequately protect the animals that need to be protected. The deer and the moose are doing fine. Anything with white wine is doing fine, you know. But
Yeah,
but when it comes to fur bears, not so much.
right.
So I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't.
Oh no, no, I agree 100% with everything you just said. Yeah, but so I spend a lot of time with coyotes out here in Colorado, and I've been out just yesterday, and I've been looking for a particular den, and it's been fun because the bison have been hanging out where somewhere around that den, and so coyotes are just walking through the bison herd, which has been really fun to see. But I also know that our coyotes are different from yours. And I'd love to just get the quick history on how did that happen? Why is a coyote not a coyote, not a coyote?
Right. So our coyotes are coyotes. They're just Eastern coyotes. And that means by definition that they're a hybrid. And so as, at the later part of the 19th century, I'm sure you folks all know this, but later part of the 19th century, pressure began to build on Western coyotes when folks began to move out there in droves, changing the landscape from, what it was to cows and sheep and killing coyotes and, all the stuff that people had done out here to completely eliminate predator populations. So coyotes began to move. And the coyotes that came across, the ones that took the southern route remained small Western coyotes, 35 pounds or so. They didn't hybridize with any wolves because there were no wolves with which to hybridize. The ones that took the northern route got up into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, met the Great Lakes gray wolf, which is a smaller wolf than the gray wolf, and bred with it. And then some of them went further up into Canada and met the Eastern wolf. And that was a match made in heaven, I think, for the coyote anyway. And hybridized with the Eastern wolf, continues to hybridize with the Eastern wolf. And when coyotes finally came down then from Canada into the Northeast, it had the DNA signature of both wolves, really. And now some of our coyotes have the DNA signature of gray wolf, Great Lakes gray wolf, and Eastern wolf. And so our coyotes range from 40, 45 pounds all the way up to about 60 pounds. And it's really amazing. And the Northeast section of the United States seems to be this. It's been called a hybrid swarm, which is a little bit on the alarming side, I think. But animals up in Quebec and Ontario, wolves up there, readily breed with are Eastern Coyotes. And it's made for an animal that has behavioral patterns that are significantly more wolf than coyote. 2/3 of our animals pack up and have territories that are defended. Um, and um,
And real quick on that. Are so these packs are they're beyond family units? They
no, it is purely a family unit.
okay.
And so one family per pack per territory. And the territory sizes vary according to the prey density, of course. But where you have a lot of, like last night I was in Vermont, and Vermont is a state of gorgeous pasture. And so abundant rodents. It is a coyote's dream come true to live in Vermont. And so the territory sizes are rather small over there because the prey is so dense. Over here, where it's more wooded, the territory sizes are a little bit larger. Um, but the behavior is really kind of remarkable how they defend their territory, and much of the defense to the complete discontent of people trying to sleep happens at night when they're howling to defend their territories. And one pack will defend against another pack through howling, and I'm sure that happens out west as well, of course. But we have these families, these packs, and it's detectable. In the wintertime when we have snow, you know exactly the stretch of the territory. You see how they pee and poop all over the boundaries of it. It's just really wonderful. And they're
It is.
big.
Yeah, yeah. So at what point does a Eastern Coyote
Oh, I knew you'd ask this.
become an Eastern Wolf?
It's the fall of each year, just like when the elk become moose.
It's a full. I thought it was a full moon, and then they wake up naked, and they're like, "What have I done?"
Yeah,
No.
well, happens to the best of us. But yes, we I'm glad you asked that question, Mark, because I'd love to hear your answer on this, Chris.
Well,
And
so Eastern wolves. So the exciting thing that's happening out here is that over the last 30 years, we have documented wolves coming down from from Ontario, and also probably from Quebec as well. Um, Eastern wolves primarily. And when these Eastern wolves come down, I'm assuming that they will breed with our Eastern coyotes. Now, of course, coyotes are all over the place in Ontario. In Algonquin Park, which is the home of Eastern wolves, there's a concern happening right now because um, Eastern wolves carry up to 30% coyote DNA. And our coyotes carry up to 30% Eastern wolf DNA. The hybridization is much more frequent, of course, up in Ontario. And there's concern for the Eastern wolf that coyote genes are going to swamp the Eastern wolf. In a similar way, the red wolves that were reintroduced into the Carolinas, there's the same exact concern there. Now, this will upset many people, and I am not going to apologize for it because I
Well, at
believe
least you're
correctly.
upsetting them this time and not me. So go for it.
that's true.
Okay.
Okay.
I am not a speciesist. I have never been. I have always believed in the niche as the thing that should guide managers in terms of how something is valued, really. And so if if this hybrid animal, if this hybridization produces a more coyote-like wolf, that animal is more likely to get along with people in New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine, just like it does now. It's an animal that has no interest in us, stays away. We all live within the territory of a pack of coyotes. We rarely see them. It's marvelous, right? But if we could have a more wolfy coyote to take care of the deer, we'd be set. And in Canada, since they've got a gray wolf, which is doing a good job with deer, and Great Lakes gray wolves, which are also pretty efficient deer killers, then that enhanced dose of coyote DNA in that eastern wolf will help it become a more adaptable canid. And in the right environment, which is its natural home down here in the Northeast, we need a deer killer here badly. Ask any forester in the Northeast. Deer are just slaughtering the future of our forests every single spring. So I like the idea of coyote genes swamping wolf genes. And I desperately wish that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would just cut out all the machinations around, getting coyotes sterilized and, all this stuff. It's just ridiculous. Let nature do what nature is prone to do, and nature will make the best choice.
Yes, life finds a way is one of our favorite Jurassic Park quotes that we stand by. Um, Chris, you mentioned about deer really ravaging forests. What's something that happens when we don't have these predators on the landscape to do their job as part of the ecosystem? What's the kind of damage that we then see from hoofed animals?
So if coyotes were deer killers, and they're not yet, I have every hope that through hybridization, they become more efficient at killing deer. But right now they're keeping deer nervous. And that is keeping deer. It's unfortunate for hunters because hunters are having a little bit of a harder time with that. But when deer feel comfortable and safe in a wooded environment, in the spring, they and their fawns will go in and eat the saplings of maple and beech and oak and the hardwoods that are the fundamental basis of our logging economy out here, which is really important to the well-being, economic well-being in the Northeast. So I think that, given the fact that I've talked to a number of hunters who say that deer have become harder to find, even as there are many more deer, I think coyotes are doing a job. They're doing their job.
Yeah, and we get that out here too. The elk and deer herds have disappeared or been decimated because wolves are back, but they're really just acting like elk and deer. So to me, that's maybe we need to up our hunting skills if we're having issues actually hunting alongside some carnivores that are doing an excellent job. And I think that them doing those services, again, it keeps herds healthy. So hunters can enjoy that hunting recreational activity even longer because they're not selecting for elk or deer that are healthy, that are, the bucks running around in the wilds. They are selecting for the weak and the sick and giving those herds the best chance at long-term survival too, and thus giving the hunters' families the best chance at future generations hunting. And I wish we could see that happen. We could see that recognition a little bit more. I think that'd be really great.
The recognition of it would be really great. I agree completely.
And so what kind of rules are there? So, well, first question is, can you say there are eastern wolves in New Hampshire, or any other northeastern state? And then the follow-up is, how are those species regulated? Do they have different protections than Eastern Coyote does?
Eastern coyotes have no protection. 365 days a year, nighttime hunting during the mating season, wildlife killing contests. It's a free for all out here. It's disgusting. Eastern wolves are protected as an endangered species as a gray wolf, actually. So under the umbrella of the gray wolf. And they're protected in Canada, and they're protected down here as an endangered species. The thing is, do we have a population of eastern wolves? No, we don't have that. We have proof that they have come down. Our proof, unfortunately, is when they're killed. And hunters that recognize that they have taken the wrong coyote, because they always think it's a really large coyote. Some of those hunters will actually report their kills. Then we can get DNA and we can learn more about what's going on.
Yeah, there's nothing that's more frustrating to me in the coyote world than when a wolf is killed and the excuse is, "Oh, well, I thought it was a coyote." It's like, well, why were you killing the coyote?
Right.
It's absolutely maddening. Um, with with the differences between the two, when you go over 30% coyote or over 30% wolves, what traits are you first seeing in these animals that one, is it easy to identify one versus the other, like one more that has more wolf DNA or one that has more coyote DNA, or is it something that it's like, I'm fairly certain this is this or this is that?
Is your question about how to tell the difference between?
Yeah, yeah. Is it something that a layperson would be able to
I
differentiate?
so last night, when I was giving the talk, I showed a number of pictures of an eastern wolf and an eastern coyote, and I asked the audience, which had 3 hunters in it, what are these things? And everybody got it wrong, basically. Um, and I did it again and again. I have a number of slides that do the same thing. I've also showed them to the fish and game people. They couldn't tell the difference. And yet they expect hunters to be able to tell the difference. And so I think, first of all, Fish and Game has to pony up and realize that this wasn't exactly your question. I'm sorry, but it's led me here.
I'll take any answers.
Fish and Game has to pony up and realize that eastern wolves are becoming part of the landscape again, and do, at the very least, an alert to their hunters to let them know eastern wolves are out there and you can't kill one. So then the next question is, so how do you tell the difference between them? Well, because eastern coyotes are hybrids, and some of these hybrids look so much like a wolf that you can't tell it apart. What I'm secretly hoping, and don't tell anybody I said this,
All right, everyone
is
turn off this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
yeah, no problem. Don't let anybody know I feel this way. Until coyotes have a reasonable management, a humane management that makes sense. Like Massachusetts, for example, allows hunters to kill coyotes for 2 months, October and November, period, end of story. And most of those animals that get killed are that year's young, right? And then the whole rest of the year, these animals can be family units and carry on their lives. So, I'm hoping that everybody will come to the logical decision that the only way to protect the wolf is to protect the coyote. And God knows I never thought I would ever hear myself say that, but it makes sense,
I
right?
agree. Yeah, I mean, we have a similar issue here with bobcats and lynx, and while they still allow hunting and trapping of bobcats, the regulations get tighter when there's overlap in those areas. But again, like regulations can only do so much. And there's the, oh, I'm sorry. And right when we introduced lynx, there was, I think it was 10 that were 11 that were killed by a gunshot. And that answer was, oh, we thought it was bobcat. Oh, well, bless your heart. I keep killing those bobcats, but watch out for those lynx. And, but it doesn't, it doesn't work when you put the identification piece on there as the main driver to protect a species. You got to just abstain, from killing either one for at least the majority of the year, and then we can make progress there.
And that's a heavy lift. And here, wolves have shorter tails than coyotes do. Our coyote tails are abundantly, fabulously gigantic.
Like a
And
foxtail almost, like as far as proportions go.
Oh, yeah. And some of the tails go all the way down to the ground. I mean, they strut their stuff. It's beautiful. Whereas wolf tails are a little bit smaller. Also, the ears are a little bit different. Gray wolves have sort of rounded ears. Eastern wolves don't. Eastern wolves have sort of coyote-looking ears, but they're set slightly further apart. That's a detail. That's a hard one. The muzzle is another big way that we can tell the difference between one and the other. Coyote muzzles, have that long, slim rostrum that's just so beautiful, and I love it. With Eastern wolves, they are more square and a little bit more powerful looking. So you've got to look really closely at the animal to figure out what it is. But now, because of hybridization, we have Eastern coyotes with very square muzzles. And so that wouldn't be helpful. When I was up in Algonquin Park a while back, I asked one of the authorities up there if he could tell the difference between an Eastern wolf with whom they live and the Eastern coyote. Nope, can't do it.
Yeah, and so you were talking about giving presentations and quizzing the audience with a photo of an animal that is not moving that you can study and still get it wrong.
Exactly.
And we're expecting hunters to make a split-second decision on a moving target in the wild. It's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't work.
Right, and then to self-report too when they make to self-report if they've accidentally killed a wolf, or self-report if they've accidentally killed a lynx. I think that's a tough element of how we manage fish and wildlife too.
Well, the people that do self-report don't end up going to jail and getting fined thousands of dollars. There's a recognition, I think, among agencies that, if these guys understood that they made a mistake, the animal's confiscated. They don't get to keep it. But we get DNA on the animal. So,
And they don't go to jail.
Yeah.
Right.
That works. My final question for you, Chris, is having been in this and starting your coalition and working with carnivores and working with sheep, if folks want to advocate, what's your best piece of advice for people that want to help coyotes or help wolves really thrive on the landscape in the Northeast?
That question was asked last night. People in Vermont wanted to know what they could do. And I said, show up. Writing letters to committees, that's good if the committees would read the letters. Out here generally doesn't happen, but showing up at a hearing. And so in Vermont, there is a group called Protect Our Wildlife, run by Brenna Galdenzi. She's brilliant and excellent at her work. And I told them to support her, support Protective Our Wildlife, watch for next legislative session to see what bills show up. And if it's a bill that inspires your passion, drive over to Montpelier and testify. Don't be afraid to do it. Do it. And to me, I think after all of these years, I think that's the best thing to do. The other thing is for people to contact their local elementary school and offer a program to 4th, 5th, 6th graders about the nature of coyotes, the nature of the top predator in the state, because this is our top predator, and try to disassemble some of that fear that kids are getting from, I'm sure, what their fathers and mothers are saying as they both go out into the woods to shoot them.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is absolutely so important, and I had my attention slightly shifted because school is out today, and my daughter is home from school, so playing multitasking today. But yeah, well, I think it's always the children are our future, but those children need to grow up and be responsible human beings as well. So it's always overlapping. So my last question is just, where do we find more about the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition? Are you on social media, websites?
Yeah.
What do we got going on?
Yeah, we have the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition has a Facebook page, and we also have a website, www.nhwildlifecoalition.org. And so you can find out who we are and what we do. And you can also, for anybody, I don't know how far-ranging this podcast is.
We're international.
We are international.
Really?
Canada and the occasional European listener.
Wow. So for anybody listening in New Hampshire, join the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition and follow us and see what we're doing.
Wonderful. Well, you have fueled my fire to get to the Northeast again and look for some of these animals. Yes, I will be there. I will be there before you know it. But I love the education. I love anytime I get the opportunity to speak with you, and thank you again for coming on the Wildlife Wire.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you both.
This has been an episode of the Wildlife Wire with me, Mark Searles, and my co-host, Samantha Miller. Thank you for listening.